It was a sunny afternoon, and Emily, a 6-year-old girl with big blue eyes and a heart full of kindness, was sitting on a park bench, munching on a sandwich her mom had packed for her lunch. She loved these peaceful moments, sitting under the shade of a big oak tree, with the sounds of birds chirping and the occasional laughter of other kids playing nearby. But today something caught her eye that made her stop chewing for a moment. A man, ragged and unkempt, sat on the sidewalk, not far from where Emily was. His clothes were tattered, and his face was drawn, showing signs of exhaustion and hunger. He was hunched over, sitting on the curb with his head low, and his eyes seemed distant, as if life had given him no reason to hope anymore. Emily's eyes softened as she watched him for a while, her sandwich forgotten in her small hands. She had always been taught by her mother to look out for people in need, to help when she could, and today her heart told her that this man needed help. Without thinking twice, she stood up, grabbed her sandwich, and approached him slowly. The man didn't notice her at first, but as she got closer, he lifted his head and gave her a tired, sad smile. "Are you hungry?" Emily asked, her voice soft but filled with genuine concern. The man blinked, clearly surprised by the kindness coming from such a young girl. He opened his mouth to respond, but his words caught in his throat. He wasn't sure what to say. He wasn't used to kindness like this. Emily held out her sandwich, offering it to him. "I have a lot. You can have some, if you're hungry." The man hesitated, looking at her, then at the sandwich, his eyes filled with emotion. It had been a long time since anyone had offered him anything, let alone a child. With a shaky hand, he took the sandwich from her and nodded in gratitude. "Thank you," he said quietly, his voice rough but his eyes shining with a hint of surprise and warmth. Emily smiled and sat next to him on the curb. She didn't need to know his story. She didn't need to ask why he was sitting alone in the park or how he ended up there. All she knew was that he needed food, and she had food to share. It was as simple as that. But little did Emily know that the man she had just shared her lunch with was no ordinary person. In fact, he was one of the most famous people in the world, Keanu Reeves. And at that moment, Emily had no idea her simple act of kindness would lead to something much bigger than she could ever imagine. What would you do if you were in Emily's shoes? Would you have the courage to help a stranger, even if you didn't know who they were? Before we dive deeper into Emily's incredible journey, hit the subscribe button and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story is just getting started. Stay tuned to see how one small act of kindness changed everything. Emily was a little girl with big dreams, a big heart, and a love for helping others. She lived with her mom, Sarah, and her older sister, Lily, in a small apartment in the city. Though their home wasn't filled with material wealth, it was full of love, laughter, and warmth. Sarah, a schoolteacher, always taught her daughters the value of kindness and compassion. Emily had a natural gift for making friends with everyone she met. At school, she was the girl who would help the new kid find their way around or sit with someone who was lonely at lunch. Her friends adored her, not because of what she had, but because of who she was, a sweet, caring soul who never hesitated to offer help. Her mom often shared stories about how Emily had a remarkable ability to understand the feelings of others, even when they didn't speak up. Sarah would say, "Emily, you have the gift of seeing the world through others' eyes. Never let that gift go to waste." And Emily had taken those words to heart. She knew what it felt like to be sad or lonely, and she never wanted anyone else to feel that way if she could help it. One of Emily's favorite things to do was sit with her mom in the kitchen, watching her cook dinner, and listen to stories about the importance of kindness. One day, while they were making cookies together, Sarah asked Emily what she would do if she ever met someone in need. "I'd help them," Emily had replied matter-of-factly, her tiny hands stirring the batter. "I'd give them my lunch, or my blanket, if they were cold. If someone's sad, I'd make them smile." Her mom had smiled warmly at her. "I'm so proud of you, Emily. You have such a beautiful heart. Remember, even the smallest gesture can make the biggest difference in someone's life." Emily's mom didn't know just how much those words would shape the next steps in Emily's life. They were about to have a life-changing encounter, one that would show Emily that even the simplest act of kindness could spark something incredible. That afternoon in the park, when Emily shared her sandwich with the homeless man, she didn't just feed him. She gave him something much more valuable: hope. And hope was something that Keanu Reeves, for all his fame and fortune, had been struggling with lately. You see, Keanu had been living a quieter life in recent years. Though he was known as one of Hollywood's biggest stars, he had never been one for the limelight. He preferred solitude, finding comfort in simple things, like helping those in need and connecting with people on a human level. Despite all the success and wealth he had achieved, he had always felt an emptiness inside, a longing for something real, something pure. Emily didn't know it, but her simple, selfless gesture was exactly what Keanu needed to remind him that kindness, love, and human connection were what truly mattered in life. Keanu had been struggling with some personal challenges. He had faced loss and heartbreak, and sometimes it felt like the world was weighing him down. That day, sitting on the curb in the park, he had been questioning everything, unsure of the direction his life was headed. But when Emily came up to him with that sandwich and that innocent, kind heart, something clicked. For the first time in a long while, Keanu felt seen and appreciated, not as a celebrity but as a person. Emily didn't care who he was or what he had done in life. She just saw someone who needed help, and that was enough for her to act. As Keanu sat there eating the sandwich Emily had given him, he couldn't help but feel a rush of gratitude. He had received many gifts in his life, but nothing quite like this. A little girl with no expectation of anything in return had offered him the most precious thing anyone could give, a moment of kindness. Keanu had a feeling that this meeting, this simple moment in time, was no accident. It was as if the universe had brought him here for a reason, to remind him of what really mattered. And Emily? She simply returned to her bench, content in the knowledge that she had made a small difference in someone's day. She had no idea that she had just helped a man who would later change her life in ways she couldn't even begin to imagine. What would you do if you met someone who needed help just like Emily did? Would you act with the same kindness and compassion? Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next in this amazing journey of kindness. As the days passed, Emily's life continued as usual. She went to school, played with her friends, and spent time with her family. The memory of the homeless man she'd helped in the park faded into the background, buried under the excitement of everyday life. But something about that encounter stayed with her, just beneath the surface, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, something special had happened. However, not everyone shared her view on helping others. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon when Emily and her mum were out grocery shopping. As they walked out of the store, Emily spotted a familiar face, a man sitting on a bench near the entrance. Her heart skipped a beat as she recognized him instantly. It was the same homeless man from the park. But this time, he wasn't alone. A couple of teenagers walking by with their friends snickered as they saw the man sitting there. "Look at him," one of the boys said, loud enough for Emily to hear. "Who would even give a guy like that any food? He's probably just going to waste it." Emily's cheeks flushed. She looked at her mom, hoping she wouldn't hear. Sarah, ever calm and composed, gently placed a hand on Emily's shoulder. She gave her a reassuring smile and said quietly, "Don't let what they say bother you, Emily. Some people don't understand kindness the way you do." But Emily couldn't shake the words. They stung. She didn't want to believe that anyone would. Look down on the homeless man, especially after she'd seen the gratitude in his eyes when she had shared her sandwich with him. She wanted to run up to those teenagers and tell them they were wrong, that this man was worth helping, that everyone deserved kindness, regardless of how they looked or where they were from. But she stayed silent. As Emily and her mom continued to walk past the bench, she glanced back at the homeless man. To her surprise, he was watching her. His eyes met hers, and she saw a small, sad smile form on his lips. It was the same man she had helped, and yet something was different now. He seemed distant. The next few days were harder for Emily. She found herself thinking about that moment a lot, especially the look in the man's eyes as he watched her walk away. She wondered if he had felt embarrassed or rejected by the teenagers. Was he grateful, or was he hurt by the way people treated him? Emily's mind swirled with questions, and her heart ached for him. She knew she couldn't just forget about him, but what could she do? She was just a little girl. What good would it do if she tried to talk to the man again? What if she made things worse? Meanwhile, Keanu, who had watched Emily walk away with her mom that day, felt something stirring inside him too. As much as he had appreciated Emily's kindness, he realized that he had started to see the world through her eyes. The way people judged others based on their appearance, their circumstances, or their past. It was something he had become too accustomed to, but never truly noticed until now. Keanu had lived a life where his every move was scrutinized. People saw him as an actor, a celebrity, someone who was always in the spotlight, but he often longed for a world where people didn't judge him based on what they saw on a screen, where kindness wasn't an exception, but a way of life. He understood now why Emily's act of kindness had meant so much to him. She hadn't seen him as a famous person or as someone who could give her something in return. She had just seen him as a fellow human being who needed help, and that was enough. The conflict, however, wasn't just external. It was beginning to build inside Keanu as well. He wanted to show Emily that kindness was powerful, but he also knew that the world they lived in could be harsh and unforgiving, especially for someone like Emily, a young girl, vulnerable to the same judgments that had been placed on him for years. Could he protect her from the same prejudice that society placed on people like him? Was he prepared to reveal who he really was to her? Or would his identity as Keanu Reeves only make things more complicated? Have you ever experienced judgment because of who you are or where you come from? How did it make you feel? Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. Trust me, you won't want to miss the twists and turns coming up in Emily and Keanu's journey. The days after the awkward encounter outside the grocery store were filled with confusion for Emily. Her thoughts kept returning to the homeless man. She couldn't shake the feeling that her simple act of kindness hadn't been enough. She worried about him, about the look in his eyes when she walked away. Had she made a mistake? Was he disappointed in her? But then, one afternoon, just as she was playing in the park with her sister Lily, Emily noticed something familiar. Sitting by the fountain on the very same bench where she had first met him was the man, once again looking down, but this time with something different in his posture. There was no sadness, no distance in his eyes. He wasn't slumped over. Like he had been before, he looked more alive, more present. Without a second thought, Emily grabbed Lily's hand and tugged her towards the bench. "Come on, Lily. I need to talk to him," Emily said with excitement in her voice. Lily raised an eyebrow but followed her sister, amused. "Are you sure he's okay, Em?" "I think so. I just want to make sure." When they reached the bench, Emily hesitated for only a second. Then she cleared her throat and smiled warmly. "Hi again," she said, her voice bright and innocent. The man, now looking a little more put together than last time, turned toward her, his face softening when he saw her. His tired eyes immediately locked onto hers, and for a moment it felt like no words were needed. "Hey there," he replied, his voice gentler than before. "You're back." Emily nodded, her small hand clutching Lily's. "I just wanted to see if you're okay, and I brought you something." From her backpack she pulled out a fresh sandwich, carefully wrapped in wax paper. It was the same kind she'd given him before. Her offering, simple and genuine, seemed to touch something deep inside him. "I made it myself," Emily said proudly. "I thought maybe you could have it." The man smiled, his face breaking into a much softer expression this time. He didn't reach for the sandwich right away, though. He just sat there for a few seconds, staring at her in quiet wonder. "You're a special girl, you know that," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Emily blinked, unsure of what to say. "I just want you to feel better." "I will," he replied with a small nod. "You've already made me feel better just by coming back." Lily, who had been standing quietly next to her sister, watched the interaction carefully. She had always known Emily was kind-hearted, but seeing her offer help again without hesitation made her realize just how much her sister cared for others. It wasn't just that Emily had helped him the first time, it was that she kept coming back, even when it seemed like the world had other things to say. Emily's curiosity began to get the best of her as she looked at the man. "Do you have a name?" she asked. The man paused, It was a simple question, but it carried weight. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. He could give her a fake name. He could walk away. But something in his heart tugged him in a different direction. Something about this little girl's sincerity made him want to open up just a little. "My name's Keanu," he finally said, looking down as if unsure of what would happen next. "Keanu?" Emily repeated, unsure if she should say anything else. "That's a cool name," Keanu chuckled softly. He had heard a lot of things about his name over the years, but the way Emily said it, pure and unburdened, made it sound different. It didn't carry the weight of celebrity or expectations. It was just a name, one that didn't define him. For the next few minutes, Emily and Keanu sat there, talking like old friends. They didn't discuss anything deep, just simple things. Emily shared stories about school and her favorite things to do with her family. Keanu, for the first time in a long while, listened with genuine interest. It felt good to talk to someone who didn't want anything from him, who didn't expect anything other than his company. But as they spoke, Keanu's mind kept wandering. He knew he couldn't hide forever. He had already crossed a line. Emily was offering him kindness, but the more he opened up, the harder it was to keep his secret. If she found out who he truly was, if she learned he was Keanu Reeves, would that change everything? Would she still see him the way she did now? And what about Emily's mom? What would she think of all of this? Keanu wasn't used to the idea of revealing himself to people who hadn't asked for it. Would he be burdening them? Would they start seeing him as someone other than the man who had simply shared a lunch with a little girl? But as Emily's laughter filled the air and her innocent questions continued, Keanu couldn't help but feel at peace. Maybe he didn't need to reveal everything right now. Maybe, for once, he could just be Keanu, the man who had received a simple sandwich from a kind-hearted little girl, and let that be enough. Have you ever had a moment where you just wanted to be yourself without any expectations or judgments? How did it feel? Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story is building up to something incredible, and you won't want to miss the twists that are coming next. As the weeks went by, Emily and Keanu's unexpected bond grew deeper. They met in the park almost every day, often sitting on that same bench talking about everything from schoolwork to what they had for breakfast. Emily had grown attached to Keanu in a way that only a child could, without any barriers, without any preconceived notions. She saw him as a kind man who needed help, and that was all she needed to know. But as much as Keanu valued their time together, there was a nagging feeling inside him. The secret he'd been keeping, his true identity, was weighing heavily on him. Every time he saw Emily's wide, trusting eyes, it became harder to keep the truth from her. One warm afternoon, Emily arrived at the park a little earlier than usual. She was excited because today she had a surprise for Keanu, something she knew would make him smile. She had made a batch of homemade cookies with her mom, and they were still warm when she placed them in a small bag. As she approached the bench, she noticed Keanu was already sitting there, his back straight, his posture as calm and collected as it had been in the past few days. There was something different in his expression today, though. His eyes seemed heavier, burdened with something, unsaid. "Hi, Keanu," Emily called out, her voice filled with enthusiasm. "I made you some cookies. I hope you like them." Keanu looked up, his eyes meeting hers with a mixture of surprise and something else, something that looked almost like guilt. "Hey, Emily," he replied, his voice softer than usual. "Thank you. That's so thoughtful of you." Emily sat down next to him, handing him the bag of cookies. "I thought you might like them since you always share your food with me," she said, beaming. Keanu took the bag, but his fingers lingered on it for a moment before he looked at Emily, his gaze intense. There was a long silence between them as Emily waited for him to speak. Her smile slowly faded as she noticed something was off. "Keanu?" she asked cautiously. "What's wrong?" Keanu took a deep breath, as if steeling himself for what he was about to say. He had never planned for this moment, never imagined he'd be sitting here talking to this young girl, this angel of kindness, and revealing the truth about who he was. "Emily," he began, his voice trembling slightly, "there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you a long time ago. Emily looked at him with curiosity, her big blue eyes wide. "What is it?" Keanu hesitated, his mind racing. It wasn't just his secret identity that he was worried about revealing. He was worried about how Emily would react. Would she still see him the same way? Would she still want to share her cookies with him? Would she still want to be his friend? "I'm not just some guy who sits on a bench," he said, his voice low. I'm Keanu Reeves." Emily blinked, processing the name. Keanu Reeves. She had heard that name before. She had seen his face on TV, in movies. Her mind raced, but the confusion was brief. Emily had always been the type to take things at face value, and the fact that Keanu was famous didn't change who he was to her. He was still the man who had shared a moment of kindness with her. "You're Keanu Reeves?" she asked, her tone one of disbelief, but not fear. Keanu nodded, his gaze drifting down to the bag of cookies in his hands. He felt vulnerable now, exposed in a way he hadn't felt in years. "Yeah, the actor," he said quietly. "I never wanted to tell you because, well, I didn't want it to change things. I didn't want you to see me differently." Emily was silent for a moment, looking at him with wide eyes. Then she slowly smiled and let out a small laugh. "Well, that's cool. I knew you looked familiar. But, Keanu, you're still just you. You're the man who shared lunch with me. You're the man who didn't just take food, but gave me a reason to be kind. And that's all that matters to me." Keanu was stunned. The weight that had been hanging over him for weeks began to lift. Emily didn't care that he was famous. She didn't see him as a celebrity or someone who had millions of fans. She saw him as a person who needed kindness, just like anyone else. I thought maybe you'd stop talking to me, or think I was weird," Keanu admitted, his voice barely a whisper. Emily shook her head, her smile unwavering. "I could never think you're weird, Keanu. You're my friend, and that's what friends do, help each other no matter who they are." A lump formed in Keanu's throat as he realized how deeply this little girl had impacted him. She had shown him what true kindness looked like, unconditional, without any agenda. Just then, Emily pulled out a small notebook from her bag, her eyes twinkling. "I wrote you a letter, Keanu," she said. "I thought you might like it." Keanu took the letter from her, touched by her gesture. It was simple, just a few sentences, but it was filled with so much warmth and sincerity that he could feel his heart swell. Emily's words were exactly what he needed to hear in that moment. "I'm really glad we're friends," the letter read. "You're special, and I hope you know that. You made me feel good when I shared my sandwich with you, and I want to keep being your friend. I think you're nice no matter who you are." Keanu blinked, his eyes brimming with tears. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected to feel so seen. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he belonged, not because of his fame, but because of the simple, pure connection he shared with a little girl who had no expectations of him. "I don't think I've ever met someone as kind as you," Keanu said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, Emily." Emily smiled, her cheeks rosy from the warmth of the moment. "You're welcome, Keanu. I'm just glad we're friends." In that moment, both of them knew their bond was something rare, something powerful. And they both understood that kindness wasn't just about sharing food or a moment in time. It was about seeing each other for who they truly were, without judgment. Have you ever experienced a moment where someone's kindness changed the way you saw the world? How did it make you feel? Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. The story's not over yet. There's so much more to come in this incredible journey of friendship and connection. Stay tuned. The days following their emotional conversation were filled with a new sense of warmth between Emily and Keanu. While the secret of Keanu's identity had been revealed, it didn't change the way they treated each other. For Emily, it was simply a reminder that kindness was not limited by fame, money, or status. Keanu was just a person like anyone else who needed connection and compassion. Keanu, on the other hand, was still processing the revelation of his own vulnerability. He had never expected someone so young, someone so innocent, to make him feel seen in a way no one ever had before. It wasn't just Emily's inness, but her lack of expectations, that left him feeling understood. No matter who he was or what he had accomplished, she saw him for who he truly was, a man who had a heart, who had emotions, and who had his own struggles. It was on one of those afternoons, weeks later, when the two of them sat together on the park bench again. The autumn air was crisp, the trees had started shedding their leaves, and there was a peacefulness to the moment. The busy world around them seemed to fade away as Emily and Keanu shared another quiet afternoon together. "Keanu," Emily said suddenly, her voice thoughtful, "I've been thinking." Keanu looked over at her, waiting for her to continue. "I think we all have something to offer," she said, her voice soft but confident. "Even if we don't always have a lot of money or fancy things, we have our kindness, and that's the best thing we can give. I'm glad I gave you my sandwich that day, even though I didn't know you were Keanu Reeves." Keanu smiled, touched by her words. He had never heard anyone express something so simple yet profound. It was a reminder that sometimes the smallest gestures can have the biggest impact. "Emily, I think you're right," he replied, his voice sincere. "I've spent so much of my life worrying about what people think of me because of my fame. But you've shown me that kindness doesn't need to be complicated. It doesn't matter who you are. It's just about being there for someone when they need it." As they spoke, Emily's mom, Sarah, arrived at the park, a smile on her face as she walked toward them. Emily waved her over, eager to share what they had been talking about. "Mom, Keanu and I were talking about kindness," Emily said excitedly, "and how it's the best gift we can give no matter who we are." Sarah smiled warmly, her heart swelling with pride for her daughter. She had known from the start that Emily had a special gift, her ability to see people for who they truly were, to offer kindness without hesitation. "That's such a wonderful way of looking at things, Emily," Sarah said, her voice filled with admiration. Keanu nodded, glancing over at Sarah. "You've raised an incredible daughter, Sarah. She's taught me more than I ever expected." Sarah chuckled softly, her gaze softening. "I think it's the other way around, Keanu. I think she's teaching us all what really matters." Keanu felt a wave of gratitude for Sarah and her daughter. They had shown him a truth that he had long forgotten in the world of flashing lights, red carpets and endless expectations. That real connection, real kindness, was something that came without pretense, without agendas. It was something pure, something that transcended anything superficial. As the three of them walked back towards the park entrance, the sun beginning to dip low in the sky, Emily turned to Keanu with one last question. "Keanu," she said, looking up at him with her bright eyes, "do you think we could do something together, like help others just like we did with you?" Keanu's heart swelled at the thought. "I think that's a great idea, Emily. And we don't need to be famous to make a difference. We can start small right here, just like we did." They continued to talk, walking side by side, and for the first time in a long while, Keanu felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be, surrounded by people who valued kindness over fame, connection over recognition. The story that had started with a simple lunch shared between a little girl and a man had turned into something much more profound. They had both learned a valuable lesson. Kindness is not about what you give, but about the heart behind it. It's not about who you are or what you've done. It's about how you make others feel. As Emily, Keanu, and Sarah left the park that day, they didn't need anything more than the memories they had created together, the understanding that kindness was the thread that connected them, and it was the thread that could change the world. The simple act of sharing, of caring for someone else had brought them all closer together, and it had given them a purpose beyond themselves. Keanu realized that no matter what his past was, or where his life had taken him, he had the power to change things for the better, starting with small moments like this one. And as Emily walked hand in hand with her mom and Keanu, she realized that the world didn't need to be a complicated place. With kindness, it could be a little simpler, a little brighter. Have you ever helped someone in a way that changed your life? Or maybe someone helped you? Share your thoughts with us. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story has shown us the power of kindness, but there's always more to learn. Let's keep spreading the love. As the story of Emily and Keanu's unexpected friendship continued to unfold, both of them felt a deeper sense of fulfillment and purpose. For Emily, the experience had been life-changing. The simple act of sharing her sandwich with a stranger had not only brought her a new friend, but it had also taught her the value of kindness and connection. It wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about offering a piece of yourself to others, whether they were a world-famous actor or someone who needed a little support. Keanu, on the other hand, had learned something just as important. In a world full of superficial interactions, where fame and fortune often overshadow the true essence of who a person is, Emily had reminded him of something he had long forgotten: the power of simple, human connection. Their bond had helped him find clarity in his own life, showing him that the most important thing wasn't the number of fans or the awards on his shelves, but the ability to make a genuine difference in someone's life. Now, as they stood together, on that park bench, reflecting on their journey, Keanu knew that their story was far from over. The lessons they had shared, the kindness they had given each other, were just the beginning. He knew that they could do more together, make a bigger impact in the world, starting with their small, simple acts of love and care. "We should do something bigger, Emily," Keanu said, his voice filled with a renewed sense of purpose. "We can start a movement, something that encourages people to help each other just like we did. What do you think?" Emily's eyes lit up with excitement. "I love that idea, Keanu. We can help people who need food, like you did when you were hungry. We can organize meals, hand out clothes, and just make sure no one feels alone. That way, we can spread kindness everywhere." Keanu grinned, impressed by Emily's enthusiasm. "Exactly. We can use our voices, my platform, your heart, to show people that kindness is the most important thing. We'll lead by example and help anyone who feels forgotten." As Emily's mom joined them again, she smiled, knowing that her daughter was already thinking about ways to make the world a better place. The ideas that Emily and Keanu had started to share weren't just dreams. They were possibilities waiting to be turned into reality. "Count me in," Sarah said warmly, joining their conversation. "If there's anything I can do to help, I'm all in. I believe in what you two are doing. We need more kindness in the world." And so, the seed of an idea was planted, one that would grow into something bigger than any of them could have imagined. Emily, Keanu, and Sarah began planning, brainstorming, and organizing local events that would help spread kindness throughout their community. They started small, but their message was clear. Kindness had the power to change lives no matter who you were or where you came from. As they all walked away from the park that day, Emily felt a deep sense of joy in her heart. She had never imagined that the simple act of sharing her meal with someone would lead to such a beautiful, unexpected friendship. But now, as she looked at Keanu and her mum, she realized that it wasn't just about sharing food. It was about sharing love and compassion with the world. What about you? Do you believe that small acts of kindness can make a difference? How do you think we can help others in our own lives? If this story has touched your heart, don't forget to hit subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments below. Remember, kindness is contagious, and the more we share it, the more the world becomes a better place. So, let's keep the ripple going. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments and join the movement. The journey of kindness continues. As the weeks went by, the simple idea that Emily, Keanu, and Sarah had discussed in the park began to take shape. What started as a small gesture, Emily sharing her sandwich with a stranger, had grown into something much more significant. Their kindness initiative, which they had named the Ripple Effect, began to spread throughout the community in ways they hadn't anticipated. They started by organizing small gatherings where people could donate food, clothing, and essentials to those in need. Keanu, with his public platform, shared their efforts on social media, encouraging his followers to join the cause. Emily, with her infectious enthusiasm and natural ability to connect with others, became the heart of the project. Her genuine spirit inspired people of all ages to get involved. Even Sarah, who had always quietly supported her daughter, found herself organizing drives and helping behind the scenes, turning their home into a hub of activity. The more people heard about the ripple effect, the more they wanted to be a part of it. People who had once been strangers to each other began working together, sharing their time and resources. Local businesses offered support, providing meals and supplies. Volunteers came from all corners of the community, eager to be part of something that was bigger than themselves, a movement fueled by compassion and the belief that even the smallest act of kindness could make a lasting impact. 1. Saturday afternoon, Emily and Keanu stood together at one of their charity events distributing meals to those in need. It had been an overwhelming success, with hundreds of people showing up to contribute and receive help. Emily looked around at the bustling crowd, her heart swelling with pride. "We're really doing it, Keanu," Emily said, her voice filled with awe. "Look at all these people coming together to help," Keanu smiled, a warmth spreading through him that he had never quite felt before. This was more than just a campaign. It was a movement. It wasn't about him or his celebrity status. It was about all of them, working side by side to make a difference. In that moment, he realized how much he had grown since that day Emily had shared her sandwich with him. He had learned that real fulfillment came not from the fame he had known for years, but from the meaningful connections he was now making with others. "I never would have guessed that a simple act of kindness could lead to something like this," Keanu said, his voice filled with gratitude. "This is incredible." "I guess that's the magic of kindness," Emily replied, her face beaming. "It spreads and grows, just like a ripple in the water. You never know how far it can go." As the day went on, they continued to interact with the community, hearing stories of how the ripple effect had already impacted people's lives. A man shared how the food he received at one of their events had helped him get back on his feet after losing his job. A mother spoke of how the clothes she had received gave her children a sense of dignity. There were countless stories, each one more inspiring than the last. Emily and Keanu couldn't help but feel that they had truly created something special. Later that evening, as the event wound down and the last few volunteers packed up, Keanu sat quietly on a bench, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Emily joined him, sitting beside him with a content smile on her face. The day had been exhausting, but it had also been deeply fulfilling. "I think we've really made a difference," Keanu said softly, looking out at the community that had come together in such a powerful way. This feels right." Emily nodded. "It does. And we're just getting started." Keanu smiled and reached over to give her a light pat on the back. "You're right. The best part is, we don't have to stop here. We can keep going, and we'll keep seeing the ripple grow." Emily's eyes sparkled as she thought about the future. Maybe one day we'll have people all over the world doing kind things for each other, just like we're doing now, and the world will be better because of it. Keanu looked at her with a newfound admiration. "I have no doubt about that. You've already changed my life, Emily. You've reminded me of what's truly important." And as they stood up to head home, the sky now dark with stars, they both knew that the work wasn't done. They still had so much more to give. The ripple effect wasn't just a movement, it was a new way of living, one that started with a simple meal, shared by a little girl and a homeless man, and spread across the world, one act of kindness at a time. What about you? Do you believe that one small action can lead to something bigger? Have you ever witnessed the ripple effect of kindness in your own life? If you've been inspired by this story, don't forget to hit subscribe and share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Every small act of kindness matters. Together we can make a world of difference. And remember, the ripple doesn't stop here. Let's keep it going. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments and join us on this journey of spreading kindness far and wide. Months passed and the ripple effect continued to gain momentum. What had started as a small, heartfelt initiative, led by a little girl and a Hollywood star, had turned into a nationwide movement, inspiring countless people to adopt kindness as their guiding principle. Emily and Keanu had become symbols of how small acts of generosity could change the world. Together, they had shown that no gesture was too small to matter, no action too insignificant to leave an impact. The media caught wind of their efforts, but rather than focusing on Keanu's celebrity status, the spotlight shone on the message of kindness that had brought them together. The more they shared their story, the more people across the country wanted to join the cause. People from all walks of life began participating in ripple effect events, from food drives and clothing donations to volunteering their time at shelters or simply helping their neighbors. It wasn't just about giving things away. It was about creating a culture of empathy and understanding. Schools adopted the concept, teaching children the importance of kindness and how even small actions could create positive changes in their communities. Local businesses offered incentives for customers who donated to charity or volunteered, and families found new ways to bond over shared acts of goodwill. One particular evening, as Emily sat in her room, scrolling through photos of the latest community event, she smiled to herself. She was proud of everything they had accomplished, but more than that, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. It wasn't just the donations or the large events, it was the relationships they had built, the way they had touched lives, and how they had empowered others to believe in the goodness of people. Keanu is right, she thought. It's about creating a movement, one that doesn't stop here. That thought was interrupted by a knock on her door. It was her mom, Sarah, holding a letter in her hands. "Hey, sweetie, look what just came in the mail," Sarah said, sitting down beside Emily. Emily took the letter, a sense of curiosity building inside her. She opened it carefully and began reading aloud. "Dear Emily and Keanu," she started, "we want to thank you for the incredible impact you've made in our community. You've shown us that kindness isn't just a nice idea, it's a way of life. We've seen people come together in ways we never thought possible, and it's all because of the simple yet powerful message you've shared with us. As a token of our appreciation, we've decided to name the community center in your honor." Emily's voice faltered as she read the rest of the letter. The town, in recognition of the work they had done, was naming the community center after them, the Ripple Effect Center. Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked at her mom. I can't believe it. Mom, we did it. We really did it." Sarah hugged her tightly, feeling an overwhelming sense of pride. "You're the one who did it, Emily. You showed all of us what kindness can do. You've inspired people to be better." A few days later, Emily and Keanu were invited to the grand opening of the Ripple Effect Center. It was an emotional moment for both of them. As they stood in front of the crowd, Emily took a deep breath before speaking. "I never imagined that sharing my lunch with someone would lead to all of this," she said, her voice shaky but filled with gratitude. "But I've learned that it's not about who you are or what you have. It's about what you give, and that even the smallest act of kindness can create a ripple that touches so many lives." The crowd erupted in applause, and Keanu stepped forward to join her, his smile genuine and full of pride. What Emily said is exactly right. This movement is about all of us. It's about every person who's ever shared a smile, a meal, or a moment of kindness with another. It's a reminder that kindness is free, it's contagious, and it's what can truly change the world. The ceremony ended with the opening of the new center, where families, volunteers, and community members gathered to celebrate what had been accomplished. The Ripple Effect Center was designed to be a place where people could come together, share resources, and help those in need. It was a beacon of hope and a testament to the power of kindness. As the event wound down, Emily and Keanu stood on the steps of the community center, looking out at the people who had come to celebrate with them. The legacy of kindness they had started was now solidified in the hearts and minds of so many. "I'm so proud of you, Emily," Keanu said, his voice full of emotion. "You've done something incredible. You've changed lives." Emily smiled up at him. "We've changed lives, Keanu. We all did." And as they looked around at the crowd of people who had joined them on their journey, they knew one thing for sure. The ripple they had started would continue to spread. It would reach further, touching lives all over the world. The power of kindness was limitless, and as long as people believed in it, the world would always have hope. What's your story of kindness? Have you ever witnessed or participated in a small act that changed someone's day, or even their life? Share it with us in the comments below, and don't forget to hit subscribe to join us on the next chapter of The Ripple Effect. Every small action matters, and together we can make the world a better place, one act of kindness at a time. Where are you watching from? Let us know and keep spreading kindness wherever you are.